Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Tiny Brains podcast. I'm Kevin Joyce, CEO at Tiny Brains, and with me, as always, is Peter Graham, the Brigadier of Brains.
Hello all. Thank you very much, Kev, as always.
As always. So, what we do on this podcast, if you haven't watched or listened before, depending on what channel you're on, is we take a look at the biggest stories in XR from the previous week. And today, we're going to kick off with some new hardware.
So new hardware that copies older hardware. The the Vivo Vision. You may have seen this on the news channels recently. This is a essentially a copy of the Apple Vision Pro from a Chinese smartphone manufacturer called Vivo, and they have announced their new mixed reality headsets called the Vision. There we go. Lovely, lovely stuff. And it essentially looks exactly the same. Well, from the images that we've seen so far, it does look almost exactly the same, even down to the back head strap cover. So yes.
So, Pete mentioned copy, the word copy a few times there, and you may think that's a bit, oh, well, but no, no. Go and take a look at it. It is definitely like this is this. If there was a template for how to make MR headsets, the Vision Pro is it now, right? And this device, on looks alone, we don't know much about how it runs. Neither Pete nor I have used it, but on looks alone, they have learned that template pretty well and stuck to it.
Essentially, Vivo announced it during their forum in China. So it's not had an official launch as such. There's no specs. There's literally only been a couple of images from the forum itself. An official announcement is expected about mid 2025. So you'll have to wait a few more months to find out any further details.
Yes, we don't yet know if this is just for the domestic Chinese market, where of course you cannot buy a Vision Pro, or is it going to be an international launch? We don't have that information. We also don't know anything about what the headset actually does. So can it compete against a Vision Pro? We have no idea.
Exactly. And this follows on from another headset that was announced during CES 2025, if you may remember, Kev, by a company called Play for Dream. They revealed a mixed reality headset and it took CES by storm. There was a lot of good reviews or feedback and hands-on feedback from the event. And again, this was another essentially Vision Pro copy.
So yeah, new headsets for everybody. Let's go.
Well, hopefully cheaper.
And speaking of new headsets, uh, um, yeah, Samsung aren't going to leave us behind. It looks like.
Yay, Samsung. Well, we already know about Project Muhan, and that's going to come out at some point later this year as a mixed reality headset already on Android XR. But this is a different rumor. This is Samsung XR glasses. Now, we're expecting this to be along the similar lines to maybe X Real or possibly even towards Meta Orion AR glasses. We don't quite know at the moment because this has come from a report from a Korean news outlets. So all the details have been translated from Korean. But essentially, this is a new pair of maybe XR glasses or smart glasses, as we're expecting more than AR glasses to arrive later this year, probably towards the end of 2025. Yes, we don't know, haven't seen any specs or anything like that yet. It's just a rumor at the moment, but it's probably a fairly good rumor because the news outlet has been known to be fairly spot on with a lot of its Korean coverage.
And of course, vision is the next step, right? There have been some AR glasses in the past that have had vision capabilities on them, but they've been pretty basic or unreliable or whatever the issue has been. It's going to take a company with the clout similar to Samsung in order to make that work. So yeah, here's hoping. Here's hoping that this is the next step.
Exactly. And as we've said many times before, 2025 is the year of AR, so the more the merrier.
Let's take those stepping stones and get actual good, reliable AR with vision. That's what we want. That's what we all want.
Yeah,
So moving on, we have some gaming news. Not about a specific game, and a bit sad news, really.
that's it. It's from a publisher called People Can Fly. They're based in Poland, and they're most famous for publishing VR games like Green Hell VR, Layers of Fear VR, the Blair Witch Project game that they came out, and Bulletstorm as well. So People Can Fly have published all of those, a lot of them from a studio called Incuvo. But the publisher has now announced that it is essentially phasing out of VR because it's just not seeing the results that it needs to do it. The quote was that there's a significant reduction in investments that it's seeing in VR and the production of new VR games. So it's essentially going, no, not enough money, so we're phasing it out. They are going to publish one last game in Q4 this year. Again, it's another Incuvo project, currently codenamed Project Bison. So we don't know quite what it is yet, but that will be their last VR game coming out this year.
So People Can Fly is a company that I have followed for a long, long time. In a former life, before I worked in VR, and I was a journalist on traditional gaming, I got to know the studio quite well, their founders and so on, interviewed them many times. They were the studio that was responsible for the PC port of the original Gears of War, and then they did Gears of War Judgment on Xbox 360, and obviously they were the developers of Bulletstorm as well, both the original versions and well, I don't know if they developed the VR version, but the full clip edition that came to Xbox One and PS4 they did as well. So this is a studio that I've known for quite some time, and yeah, having them in VR, while they may not be the biggest game developer on the planet, they were a good asset for us to have. And sadly, that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, so very sad because games like Green Hell VR have done well. They were good. They were good.
Very popular.
Yeah, not as popular as they needed to be, which is a long-running story that seems to be, going on in VR just of late. But yes, sad to see them move out of the industry.
As someone who's coming into the industry next, some people watching this podcast of a certain age may remember a specific file sharing service.
Yes, Napster. Do you remember that one? This company originally I think it went bankrupt in 2002 because of all the naughty music file sharing.
Was it the Metallica lawsuit or something?
It was indeed, yes, yes. Well, over the years since then, the Napster brand has been resold numerous amounts of time, and it's just been sold again this month to a company called Infinite Reality, who they have an engine for WebXR. And yes, they bought Napster for 207 million. So what they'll do with that is a little bit unknown. They have said they're going to create a social music platform with virtual concerts and all the rest of it, which we've heard before. Because if you may remember, again, if you've been in the VR industry long enough, Napster has been sold a number of times. Back in 2020, the biggest sale that for us was Melody VR bought Napster for 70 million under the guise of it wanted to do some similar things, didn't it? It wanted to do virtual concerts and all the rest of it. Well, Melody VR, as we will probably remember, pivoted away from VR because they weren't having much success in it, and then I think it got sold on again. One of the owners in between Melody and the Infinite Reality, it was a blockchain company called Allogrand. So it's been passed pillar to post. Whether anything will actually happen with this,
yeah, I mean, at this point, Napster is just a name, right? There is nothing else there. So whoever sold a name for $207 million, good for you. Go enjoy your retirement. But for the rest of us, it all depends on what the tech is, right? I don't think anyone actually cares about the name Napster. So
it's not exactly Spotify, is it? So
no. So moving on, we've got one more story for you, which is a game light, game-ish.
It's mixed reality, and it's a huge IP. It's an IP that actually loves VR. Star Wars. IML Lab or IML Immersive have announced Star Wars Beyond Victory. This is a new mixed reality. I think it's going to be a game more than, say, like an experience.
They're calling it a play set or something, aren't they?
They are, yes. So we'll have to wait and see because not many game details have been released. other
Toys,
than huh?
toys, Star Wars toys in your living room.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
But the story is it puts you in the role of a pod racer. So we're going to be going back to the old pod racing scenes from the Star Wars prequels, which are probably one of the better parts of those prequel films.
Of episode 1, yeah, it's
Yeah.
the most popular part, certainly.
But this particular game will be set during Solo: A Star Wars Story. So that era, if you know all the Star Wars lore, it'll be set during then, and yeah, you'll be having pod racing in your living room, I assume.
That was my favorite Star Wars spin-off. Feel free to argue with me in the comments below, but yeah, Solo, real sad it didn't perform.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no release date just yet, but the first public showing of this new game, Star Wars Beyond Victory, will be next month in Japan.
So let's book our flights.
Oh, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. Any reason is good enough reason to go to Japan.
Okay, so that's all we've got for this week. As always, we'll be back again next week with the biggest XR stories from this coming week. So feel free to tune into that. And if you have anything that you'd like to see discussed, or you have a project you're working on yourself that you want to appear on this podcast, feel free to reach out to us on any of the many channels that we are on, because we're on all of them. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
See you again.